introduce our next, our fearless leader, the creator of the wonderful programming and, in fact, the Good Food Festival and Conference is Jim Slama, who is fresh from Chicago, although he's been in LA for the last 2 weeks, and he will be introducing and leading the next panel. Jim is the founder and president of FamilyFarm.org, which is a nationally known nonprofit organization that advocates for the rights and the benefits of small farmers in the Midwest. We decided what better thing to do for the Santa Monica Farmers Market 30th anniversary than to bring the Good Food Festival trade show out here to the West Coast and have dialogue with people like you just heard on the panel today to really bring the national thought leaders together in one place for a series of inspiring and engaging conversations with each and every one of you. And I hope each and every one of you will continue to have one-on-one conversations with these amazing speakers. So Jim Slama, thank you, welcome. Haven't seen you since yesterday. And I'm now going to turn the podium over to Jim and to his next panel.
Thank you, Laura. And for anybody on the side, bravo, what a job, Laura. Anybody on the side here, if you want to grab a seat, there's seats available. Please join us. Next panel is called Food with Integrity, and I'd like to invite our three speakers to join us, Steve Ells, Kelly Meyer, and Dr. Ross. If you would come out and please have a seat. Sure, and then I'm not actually, I'll sit next to Steve, but I'll start here. The panel is called Food with Integrity, in part because what a great term to discuss this good food movement. It's partially called Food with Integrity because I've really been inspired by Chipotle Mexican Grill, which was founded by Steve Ells, our panelist. He's founder, co-CEO, and really creative genius behind creating really a revolutionary fast food company that is on track to do $2 billion in sales this year, that has a market capitalization of approaching $10 billion, and that with its Food with Integrity program buys almost all of its meats from family farmers, buys much of its rice from organic farmers, now it's cilantro from organic farmers. Their local program on produce is just going gangbusters. That's something where we actually started working with them at FamilyFarm.org to help them source more. And this was from a guy who went to culinary school, and said, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Well, I think maybe I'll create a restaurant. When his family saw him create a burrito joint, they're like, Steve, what's going on here? But boy, what a burrito joint it is. You've really done some amazing things with it, Steve, and they've gotten the gamut of recognition internationally from everybody from the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, referencing the fact that they're changing the way that America eats, and they're doing it in a way that is affordable and accessible to just about everybody. So welcome, Steve. Our next speaker, Kelly Meyer, is a passionate environmental activist. She's done a lot of work with the Natural Resources Defense Council, co-chair of their leadership council, just recently produced their Making Peace with the Ocean benefit, which raised $3 million to help clean up our oceans. In 2009, she created the Teaching Garden, which was inspired by First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, and found the program as a way to combat the rise of childhood obesity and lifestyle-related illnesses. With the help of veterans, the program combines organic gardening, a nutrition curriculum, cooking classes, and school-to-school communication through technology with the aim to reestablish what it means to be healthy for the next generation. They partnered with ARP, NBC, Education Nation, NBA, and most importantly, it was chosen by the American Heart Association to be its prevention campaign, and will be fully managed by the American Heart Association as it expands across the country. And I went to your launch of that at the California Endowment, and when I saw the American Heart Association getting behind gardens and prevention and teaching people how to cook, I gotta tell you, it blew me away. Congratulations, Kelly, that's an amazing accomplishment. And our last speaker, Dr. Ross, CEO of the California Endowment, a private health foundation created after the conversion of Blue Cross of California to a for-profit company that makes grants to community-based organizations throughout California working to expand access to affordable health care and improve the health of residents of California. He's got an extensive background in health philanthropy, and the endowment is focused on the health needs of underserved Californians by championing the cause of health coverage for all children, reducing childhood obesity, strengthening the capacity of community health centers, improving health services for farm workers and ex-offender populations, and strengthening the pipeline for bringing racial and ethnic diversity to the health professions. In 2010, they launched a 10-year statewide commitment to invest $1 billion to advance policies, forge partnerships to build healthy communities for a healthy California. This campaign, Building Healthy Communities, focused on 14 communities throughout the state of California, creating places where children and youth are healthy, safe, and ready to learn. Just this year, they launched something called the Fresh Works Fund, which is an amazing new initiative, and much of that's about food. So, Dr. Ross, can we start with you? Can you share a little bit about, both your passion, where the endowment is going around the issue of food, and then talk a little bit about this Fresh Works Fund, because it's so innovative and really nationally and internationally significant.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for your leadership in bringing this this great festival and conference to California. I was actually hoping to hear, I braved the 10 freeway because I wanted to hear from Steve. Steve, part of that $2 billion has come from my family. Because we shop I love your restaurants and thank you for what you've done. But so we're about the business of improving the health of underserved, disenfranchised, marginalized, low-income families and communities. We focus on young people. We are big on prevention. We're big on what we say at the foundation, health happens here. And the reason why we say that is because we're trying to get the American public and civic leaders and policymakers understand that what happens inside a healthcare system probably influences about 20 to 25% of our health, and the rest of that, 75 to 80%, happens outside of healthcare. Okay, most of it happens in the neighborhood, where you live, and the community you live in has a tremendous impact on your health quality and your health status. In fact, the data shows and the research shows that if you want me to give you a handle on your life expectancy or predict your life expectancy, tell me your zip code and I'll tell you what your life expectancy will be. Of course, food has, and access to healthy food has a big impact on that, so that we've had in the last couple of years, we've turned our attention to that issue. I'll end on that, but I just want to make two other comments in opening, Jim, and hand it back to you and your panelists. The first, of course, place matters. You'll hear from PolicyLink, Judith Bell, our great colleague from PolicyLink is here. PolicyLink helped us turn the corner to understanding the impact and the intersection between health and place and community and poverty and schools. So thank you, PolicyLink, for all the great work you've done. You'll hear from Judith Bell in the next panel. Secondly, as I walked onto the campus, there was a banner hanging up on one of the buildings right down the street. And it said something to the effect of Santa Monica College, a tobacco-free community. And then it had underneath it board policy number something or other, 2040. And when we walk by something like that, and today we would say, of course, or you might not even notice it, because there are so many smoke-free workplaces and schools and settings now. But let me tell you something, that was a 50-year battle to get that banner to hang off the side of that wall. That wasn't just the New England Journal of Medicine came out with a research paper on that smoking was bad for your health, and then people woke up and said, oh, okay, we'll make smoke-free buildings. I mean, people fought and hustled, and many people even died so that we could sit in this room today and have a smoke-free environment. And the tobacco battle in many ways, it's different in many ways, but it's similar fundamentally, is that we now have a food battle on our hands. Okay, we now have a food justice battle that we're in, and this is the next big health justice battle for this country and actually for this globe. And so the reason I use that term battle is because, particularly one of the very eloquent speaker that was on the left with the very colorful language, I actually kind of like that because we have to, sometimes we think we're in a policy debate. This is a fight, okay? And it's a movement because every time a teacher talks to kids about eating vegetables first, or every time you lobby a school board member about healthy options for kids, or every time we get a community garden in place of a vacant lot, every time we get a walking path where there was once an unsafe place for kids, every time a health entrepreneur, a food entrepreneur like Steve opens a restaurant that serves healthy food and can make a profit from it, that is part of the movement. Okay? And so it happens wherever you are. And so I'm saying that because the tobacco battle it's been a 90-year battle. The science showed that tobacco was bad for your health in the 1920s. It took us 40 years to get a warning on the side of a cigarette pack from 1920s to 1964. It took us another 35 years to see real policy changes like that banner hanging on the side of that wall that allows this campus to be smoke-free. So let us not sort of, delude ourselves about what's at stake here. It is a fight. Now, in the positive, there's been a lot of movement. The other thing that's good is because of companies like Chipotle and others, this is not like tobacco. The tobacco battle is a bit more simple because you could villainize the tobacco industry. There was nothing good that the tobacco industry could do other than to go out of business to make the country healthier. Right? The food industry can figure out a way, if we move them, through consumer demand, to make a profit and make healthy food. I mean, it is possible to do that. So it's not just villainizing the food industry and demonizing the food industry, is can we get the kind of leadership and lift up the right kind of behavior. And the third point is about schools. And I think a lot of folks are talking about that. We're in that business as well. We do a lot of policy work around helping provide the research, the data support, the practices to get schools to serve better menus. I'll close on Freshworks. What we decided to do was, when we heard from parents and communities about, stop waving your finger at we as parents, us as parents. We know our kids need to eat better, but we don't have healthier options for shopping in our neighborhood. There are many communities like this across the country. Okay, 60% of California lives in a food desert where you can't find healthy food. So we decided to do something about that by creating a financing fund. We're actually using our investment portfolio, not our grants, but our investment portfolio to incentivize independent grocers to open healthy food establishments in low-income communities that don't have access to fresh food. We put $30 million of our dollars on the table. What shocked us in a wonderful way was that we leveraged another $170 million from other investors, which was like, wow, there are other people who think that this is a good idea and that they think it's a good enough idea to put money behind it. So we now have a $200 million fund. We just got contacted by another financial institution who wants to add money to the pot this past week. And so hopefully you'll see the Freshworks Fund helping to bring healthy food options to low-income underserved communities. And if anyone needs information about that, I'll have a summary ready.
Thank you, Dr. Rawson. Two things on that. Isn't that amazing? I talked to one of my friends who's an investment banker, and he said, Tom Vilsack, the head of the USDA, and
Prince Charles.
And Prince Charles. And it went over extremely well there. People got it. This is not just about yuppies eating, food from, farmers markets or other places that, where they have access and affordability. This is about everybody getting that food, and I think what you're doing is really a tremendous thing. Kelly, what's this vision and how are you gonna like really get this to happen? Because it's a great idea. Tell us.
Well, I just want to say first of all, thank you too for having me, and it's an honor to be on panel with both of you. And thank you for your support that you've given us. And I just want you to know that when we did our first launch at Kelsey Elementary, I called up Chipotle, your marketing manager, and I said, we need food. I want to teach kids what healthy fast food tastes like. And so we had 900 kids eating Chipotle, and they loved it, and they changed their fundraising night that Friday, which was going to be at McDonald's, to Chipotle. I just also want to thank, before I start, my co-founder, Chi Kim, who is the principal at our local elementary school, where we started just on a local community level and then moved it into vulnerable communities. And it's imperative when you're doing this to have someone that speaks education and is an educator and understands how to talk principal to principal or teacher to teacher to engage people in this movement, because I'm, as a privileged person, saying want, you should eat food because everybody should eat good food is not the way to get into the hearts and minds of our kids. So Chi, I want to thank you for helping me co-found this organization. And good luck with your new job at the big foundation. So it's great. And to the American Heart Association, who's here and who took on our project, which is how we're going to do this. We're lucky to have the American Heart Association looking at prevention rather than response to heart disease, which is also wrapped up in obesity, diabetes, and cancer, etc. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do it one school at a time, one child at a time, $1 at a time, and one enthusiastic moment at a time. And I was inspired, actually, when I went to hear President Obama address the joint session about healthcare, which I think was the beginning of the big divide in this country, when he was asking them to help figure out how to pay for healthcare for our children in this country and for the people in this country. And it broke my heart to watch him ask for this help and dividing the country, so to speak, instead of having everybody come together to figure out how to make this country healthy so our healthcare wouldn't be something that's eventually going to break this country if we don't turn it around. So for me, that was my aha moment, and it was interesting to be there because I've only done that maybe 5 times in the history of our government, and I was there and I witnessed it, and I went home and I thought, what can I do? I'm an environmentalist. I came to this movement sort of through the back door, but what can I do with sort of my activism experience to have impact? And Lori David's here, and I worked with her, and I think that the food issue is really the way to solve many issues. And like Lori says, every political issue passes our dinner plate, and I think definitely every environmental issue passes our dinner plate. So I think the food issue is something that we all understand instinctually, whether it's every biological cell in our body or the macro of our entire global food system. And I think it's something that we can't close down about or put over there like climate change or dirty water, or things that maybe are too big for us to get our head around. I think we all have to eat, and I think we all know that we have to eat well. And so that's how we're going to do it. We're going to include everybody in the discussion, and we're going to get everybody involved. So anyway, the teaching gardens, we go into schools. We have veterans that maintain the gardens, which is a very important part because we want to take care of our military men coming home, men and women coming home. We want to give them jobs and we want to include them in this revolution. So it's been an amazing process to have these guys come in and help us volunteer in the schools, and American Heart Association has hired their first veteran to maintain the gardens in California, and he's fantastic and wonderful. And ideally that's the model, and we too have done a lot of fundraising and going to communities or to corporations to help us put these into schools, and it's been an amazing experience. The kids love it, they're excited. Once they see the magic of food going on their playground, it's not over here, you don't have to take a field trip, we bring it all to them. They're invested and they understand it, and it touches them more than just on the food issue. I think emotionally they get involved in the garden. They get engaged in helping and volunteering. And the teaching garden is not only about food, it's really, we've had our biggest success providing a volunteer service or volunteer opportunities for people, because a lot of large corporations like AARP, you know, they need something for their Create the Good campaign or I Participate campaign. So people want, when they volunteer, real leave behind. Yes, they want to make policy. Yes, they want to do what I do, which is, you know, amplify and talk about it and cheerlead about it. But we want to leave something behind while we're doing that, while we're raising awareness about this issue. We really leave gardens in these schools with the kids, with cooking classes, with science-based curriculum around the garden, and the ability to learn about sort of the hard work that it takes to grow our food and connecting them to a whole food source. That's the ultimate goal. So we're not only raising awareness and money when we do this, we're giving the kids the opportunity to build the garden on their playground, which is, as you know, Mud said, all black, you know, tar playgrounds. And for many of these kids, it's their first relationship or connection to the environment. So we go in there, we have them build the gardens, the boxes, we have them shovel the dirt, the good organic dirt, we have them plant the seeds, have, you know, water, organize themselves. We bring them food that's going to grow in their garden so they can see what they'll be cooking eventually out of their gardens. We give them cooking classes, we get them on the playground moving. We have a teaching garden dance, which we can do later. But, you know, exactly, I can. I got a feeling, okay. Yeah, we ripped out the Black Eyed Peas, but anyway, so we get them moving, we get them planting, we get them cooking, and we get them eating all right. And then we ask them to pass it on to another school and to take it home to their families and to talk about it with their families and show them and tell them what they did in school today. And then we get the parents, because many of these parents also in the school, it's hard for them to volunteer maybe in the classroom because they may not even be English speaking, or they may not have math skills to work in the math, you know, sessions or whatever. But most of these parents are really happy and willing and able to work in the garden. So it brings parent volunteers also into the school, which in many of these communities is really the only safe zone that they have. So it's been just so much fun, and like I said, we've worked with the NBA. We have Derek Fisher on board, who's been just fabulous. Kat Cora, one of the first female Iron Chefs, has been sort of our ambassador in that way. Gabby Reese, a lot of, you know, just a lot of people have jumped on board, and we try and get young celebrities and talents from the community that are authentic to come. We did a garden down on the base at Camp Pendleton, and Miranda Cosgrove came, and she was wonderful. And there's always an opportunity, whether it's at a Boys and Girls Club, whether it's at a military-based school, whether it's in the inner city, or whether it's in a community of people who can, you know, who are privileged, that can then learn about gardening and take that on to other schools. Wherever you are, it's a realistic way to connect kids to a whole food source and help them learn about, you know, planting a seed, gathering energy and a real calorie, if you will, from the sun, and nurturing and loving that seed and watering it and taking care of it, and eventually growing what you know, we all should be eating. And they understand that, and they sort of understand the idea of delayed gratification when they do that, and that things, you know, require a lot of work. Good things require a lot of work, and if they don't care about it, I mean, they don't take care of it, they actually witness the decay, and they understand that that's part of the cycle, and if they don't get back on it, it will be their cycle, and that's where it will stay, in the decay state. So it's metaphorical, if you will, and it's not going to solve everything, and it's not necessarily going to get enough food in their cafeterias, and it's not going to take enough food home for their families to solve the problem, but we have lots of people working in different areas. But for me, it's the magic of the garden, and it's bringing it to them and putting a little green space on that asphalt. That's what we're trying to do. So.
That's really good. Thank you. And, as you talk about school gardens, you know, just something I wanted to let people know that's going to be coming down the pipe. Actually, with the support of Chipotle Mexican Grill and others, FamilyFarm.org is creating a tool that will basically train garden operators in best practices in food safety. Because one of the issues currently going on in school gardens is that people grow the food, and then 9 times out of 10, the food service operators won't allow them to serve it in the school cafeteria because they're not certified in food safety and they're worried about liability.
That's why I'm not working on lunchroom issues.
Right, we are. Fortunately, we're going to be launching this tool, we think, in the spring. Basically, it'll teach best practices, and we're negotiating with the Chicago Public Schools and their food service provider, Chartwell's. We're going to develop a legal agreement that will be a template that is in assigning liability, and CBS has already agreed, because they're liable anyway. I mean, if somebody gets sick from that produce, they're going to get sued. Everybody put their head in the sand on the fact that that's the case. But once this liability agreement hits, then they'll know, but they'll take all the best practices, apply them, and so their liability, or the chances of an outbreak will go to near zero, so everybody will be comfortable with it. So that's something I'd love to talk to you about, because as you roll that out, we'd like to roll that out with you, and it's definitely going to be a national project. So anyway, Steve, this is all about food with integrity. You pioneered it. You're selling $2 billion a year of food that's really reflects that food with integrity. How'd you do it?
Well, thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me here today. I certainly don't think that we're pioneering this idea of serving better quality food, sustainably raised food. I look back to people who inspired me, like Alice Waters and Chez Panisse, and all the chefs that have adopted that style and cook food that's local and seasonal and artisanal, and that's a great experience. Unfortunately, though, in the United States, most people don't have access to those kinds of restaurants. Those tend to be very expensive restaurants, and they can't be part of people's everyday diet. People in this country eat fast food, and they eat fast food a lot. I think back to when I was growing up as a kid in the 70s, we used to have fast food as a treat now and again. Maybe after a little league game or on a road trip, on a vacation, something like this. But mostly, my mom cooked at home. Things have changed, and we have very, very complicated lives these days, and fast food has become a part of that. And so, I remember when I was starting Chipotle 18 years ago, I made the argument that just because the food is served fast doesn't mean it has to be a typical fast food experience, and that I was going to use all fresh ingredients and prepare them according to classic cooking techniques. And I knew these cooking techniques because I had just gotten out of cooking school a couple of years before that and worked in a very high-end restaurant in San Francisco. Actually, the chef there, Jeremiah Tower, was the first chef at Alice Waters' restaurant at Chez Panisse. So this is the way I learned to cook, and this was sort of part of me, this belief in really good quality ingredients. And so Chipotle was very successful from the beginning, and so I opened more and more of them. And but this idea of food with integrity, something beyond fresh, didn't happen until I had about 60 restaurants, and I think that was maybe 11 years ago. And I had the opportunity to visit a pig farmer named Paul Willis in Iowa, in Thornton, Iowa, and he was part of a larger co-op called the Nyman Ranch Pork Company. And he took me around to some of the Nyman Ranch farmers that were raising pigs outdoors, and or in deeply bedded barns, and they weren't fed antibiotics or growth hormones or anything like this. They were raised humanely, and the pork was absolutely delicious. And I got samples of this pork, and I made our carnitas, and it was so much better. So I asked the question, I said, well, this is great, but isn't this the way all pork is raised? I didn't really understand where most of the pork was coming from. And so I visited these industrialized hog farms just to see for myself. And what I saw was really a level of exploitation that I didn't want to be a part of. I didn't want Chipotle's success or my success to be based on the exploitation that these large industrialized CAFOs, these confined animal feeding operations were doing. And so, I saw animals suffering, I saw these giant lagoons holding all the waste, and hearing that they leak into the groundwater and overflow and go into rivers and pollute them. You read evidence that shows that antibiotic-resistant strains of diseases are occurring because of these antibiotics that are now part of the system. So I decided that we would switch our pork suppliers and buy only from Nyman Ranch at that time. And they didn't have enough pork for us, but it took about a year for them to expand their operations, and they went from about 50 family farmers in the organization to 60. And it turns out that there's about a one-to-one relationship between pork farmers and Chipotle restaurants. So it takes about one small family farmer as part of the Nyman Ranch organization to supply a restaurant. Well, they grew their business over the years. Today there are 700 or 800 independent family farmers as part of the Nyman Ranch Pork Company, which is really, really great. And we have over 1,200 restaurants, and now we're starting to get from pork from other suppliers in the Midwest, around the contiguous states, and also into Missouri. So that was really good. But what it begged the question. It's like, well, what about the rest of the food? I was buying fresh food, but did I really know where it was coming from? And so that led me and my purchasing team down this journey to visit farms and ask lots of questions. And what we decided we would do, we would start with all the meats and remove all the antibiotics and growth hormones. And then we would go to dairy and only buy dairy that was from cows that was not given this synthetic hormone RBGH, which increases milk production. Led us down the path to more organic beans and growing beans with a no-till method to preserve topsoil, and then to buy more local and seasonal produce. The onions and lettuces and cilantro and oregano and jalapenos and all these kinds of things that we buy. But we have a long way to go. I mean, we'd like to move toward a more pasture-raised system where perhaps the chickens are outside, and maybe for our beef, having them all grass-fed. But these are things that are going to take a lot of years and a lot of commitment, because the supply of these kinds of things in the United States is just not there. So we have to work with these farmers to get there. And so we think we can help change the way people think about and eat fast food by setting this example. But it's not going to be just Chipotle alone that does this, because we have a good business model. Hopefully others will look at our business model and start to adopt these practices and realize that if you're going to feed people food that they're eating every day, it has to be the kind of food that's going to really sustain them in a healthy way. And that means great quality ingredients, and it means prepared according to classic cooking techniques, not highly processed stuff. So we need more restaurants that are adopting these kinds of practices, like Chipotle. Just yesterday, we opened our first restaurant. It's a different concept. It's called Shophouse. It's a Southeast Asian restaurant, but based on the Chipotle model. And it's really, really cool. And what we've done is we've learned, all the things, all the mistakes we've made, all the things that we wish we could have done over, and started from scratch. And Shophouse is the kind of food that you really feel good about eating every day. There's brown rice and lots of veggies and de-emphasis on animal protein. Certainly you can get meats, but they're smaller portions. But the abundance of veggies and whole grains is there, and it's really, really exciting. And so yesterday, what's that?
Where's the restaurant?
The restaurant is in Washington, D.C., right on Tupon Circle. And I just got a call from the guys this morning, and there's a line 50 people long out the door. What I'd like to do is show the industry that you can cook the right way, and you can invest a little bit more money into better quality ingredients, and have something that's part of people's everyday lives that is sustainable. So that's really how we became part of this really important movement.
I want to show a video Some of you maybe have seen it, and some of you haven't, but Steve played a very important role in developing. Can we get the house lights down?
This video was inspired by actually one of our pork suppliers from Missouri who had one of these confinement operations, one of these industrialized pig operations, and of course, to make that work, he was using lots of antibiotics. And he actually got gorged by one of the pigs, and a deep cut, and it got infected. And doctors had a very, very difficult time treating him with antibiotics to cure him. And he almost didn't make it. I mean, he was in the hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they eventually treated him with really intense antibiotics, and he was okay. But after that event, he tore down his confinement operation and went back to traditional farming, and encouraged a lot of his neighbors. And he's really a pioneer in Missouri now to bring back traditional pig farming. And so this is sort of a nod to him and that story.
All right, hit it. Singing Coldplay with that kind of message. It's really remarkable. That video's already hit over 700,000 views on YouTube. And how many theaters is it going in October?
Thousands of theaters.
Thousands of theaters across the country. That's quite a message. Well, Steve, I know you have to, actually 10:46, you've got to get out of here. Thank you so much. Kelly and Dr. Weston. All right, before our next panel comes on, 2 minutes. What's your view? How are we going to change this food system? What's that one thing that's going to take to really start to transform the way we eat and I think feed our children? I know for both of you that's really an important issue. For you, Kelly, what would that be?
Well, for me, it's the idea of connecting them in a real way to a whole food source, but I just quickly wanted to say two things. One, my full circle about the healthcare debate. We also have been putting these gardens and put a garden in at the USC Keck School of Medicine, USC Cancer Center. Norris Cancer Center, and I had the dean of a world-class medical cancer institute bring his own beans from his grandmother's garden in Italy and plant with his medical students, children from Figueroa Elementary School and a vulnerable community coming forward to pay it forward. And our Women's Cancer Research Group, when we came together, we planted that garden on the campus, and he said in front of press with the USC marching band that eating vegetables can help cure cancer or prevent cancer. So that was mission accomplished for me as far as that message regarding healthcare. But how are we going to do it? What's the most important thing? American Heart Association is in many, many thousands of communities across the country. They have volunteers, one of the best volunteer bases of any organization in the country. And they're ready and willing and able, and we've had great response. They are so-called selling these gardens in the sense of people investing in this idea and ready and willing to go into these communities and teach kids about prevention, and it gives them a platform and a landing place to come in and talk about heart-healthy communities and what it really means to be healthy. So it's not after the fact, it's before the fact. And so when we can get people in, to scale in communities across the country talking about this in very broad-based organizations like the American Heart Association, then that's what I think we're going to change things. And right here in California, we're in the 14 healthy communities, so we're really excited about trying to help you in that sense, where there's support and people in the community partnering to take on this idea of what healthy eating is all about.
Thank you. How about you, Dr. Watt?
That was, I think, thank you, Kelly, for your leadership and the work you're doing. It's hard to say what the one thing is because this is a no silver bullet issue. However, I think Steve's success and presentation is a reminder of the power of the consumer and the power of a parent and the power of families who are demanding and expecting healthy eating options for their families. Because without that demand, Steve doesn't have that kind of success, right? He didn't force healthy eating on people. He gave them an option because he read that there was a market for this. And so that's powerful. And it's a reminder that we're in a lot of policy discussions. We do policy work. We support First Lady's Let's Move campaign, and we're in Washington and Sacramento. But the power of an engaged parent or an individual working at a very local level is really, really meaningful. And when you doubt that, I'll give you another example, and I'll close on this one. There is a very different societal set of attitudes and practices and behavior around drinking and driving. It is fundamentally different than it was 30 years ago. There are things that people say and do today that would be deemed inappropriate or unwise or imprudent or dangerous or unhealthy today that were accepted as societal norms 30 years ago. Okay? If someone is drunk at a party that you're hosting, you do not let them get in that car. You feel a moral obligation and responsibility not to let that happen. The reason why we have had reduced traffic fatalities in this country and a whole swath of public policies around drinking and driving is because parents got pissed off. Okay? It wasn't the scientific journal paper from the New England Journal of Medicine. It wasn't even a public health professional. They were putting the data out there. But when it was parents got in front of Congress or in front of the county board of supervisors or in front of their state legislature and said, this was my 16-year-old son, this did not have to happen, and I'm holding you accountable to do something about it. Never underestimate the power of a pissed off parent.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Thank you, Kelly. Before we bring up our next panel, I just kind of want to do a few things that are those kind of things that you need to do at a conference. First of all, expressing gratitude. There's a lot of people who've been deeply involved in the development of this event on all levels. Laura Avery, our partner from the Santa Monica Farmers Market, who's celebrating a great 30th anniversary, and her team, the FamilyFarm.org team from Chicago, we've got 7 or 8 of them out here, have done a phenomenal job. Our local team, with an advisory board of 25 people who have contributed greatly to developing this program. We've got 180 speakers over 5 days who are, on all elements of food and policy, and 10 of the best chefs in LA are doing cooking demos tomorrow at Santa Monica High School. We've got a Food for Thought lecture series with people like Lori David and Robert Kenner from Food Inc. and visionaries from really across the spectrum. Steve talked about Bill Nyman from Nyman Ranch. He's doing a meat panel with Mel Coleman, another meat visionary, and just so many great speakers. So if you have a chance, join us for all of these amazing events, or as many as you can. Tonight we're having a gala dinner on the ocean. 600 people, 30 of LA's best chefs are partnered with Santa Monica Farmers Market farmers at the Annenberg Community Beach House. It's going to be a really fun night. And then come out this weekend and tell your friends. Twitter, send them an email. This is our first time. It's kind of like, oh my God, are they going to come? So we hope they come. We hope you come. And so anyway, just a little bit on the logistics. I also want to thank our sponsors. As I mentioned, Chipotle is the presenting sponsor of this event. Whole Foods Market has been our partner in Chicago for 6 years. They're also a procurement partner. We've been working with them in the Midwest on helping link them with more local food for that whole period. And that relationship really has been deep and wonderful. Nona Evans from their foundation, who runs their foundation, spoke on an earlier panel. Much gratitude for what they've done in bringing family farm food and sustainable food. And we were talking about the standards for meat. They pioneered it. Now you go into their store and you see, at what level of pasture and really amazing life that these animals have. And it's all about transparency. It's helping people understand, okay, there's a price for really small scale animal farm production that, is raised on pasture every day of their life. Or there's, larger scale corn fed, but no antibiotics and hormones, and there's everything in between. And so, for us, how do we create that integrity food system that gives people who don't have the resources access to at least fresh food and maybe has less adulteration, because we're putting pressure on people to, let's not adulterate our food with all these chemicals and things that might cause MRSA down the road and other things, to really amazing family farm food that is expensive to produce because it's not at scale, and everything in between. So we're grateful for Whole Foods. We're grateful for Bon Appetit Management Company. They're speaking tomorrow. They've been a real revolutionary in food service. And Fidel Baucho, their founder, is a big supporter of this, and a woman who runs their foundation is here tomorrow. They've been driving food service, sustainable food service in 700 cafeterias in colleges and high school across the country. Applegate Farms, great company, sustainable meats, a real pioneer. Nature's Path Organic. School Food Focus is here today, actually. They've got a separate meeting. There's a trade show out on the quad, which I invite you all to go to. We've got all kinds of vendors, including those who want to sell food to school districts. And we've got school districts that serve meals to over 1 million children a day. Meeting today, talking about how do we do better, more sustainable, healthier food, sourcing it from local farmers, and do it in a way that's responsibly produced. So that's really an exciting step forward for us in this movement. Metabolic Studio is a big supporter of KCRW, Organic Valley, my favorite milk company, Stonyfield Farm Yogurt, Nutiva, Earth Friendly Products, Snag Films. By the way, on the back cover, vote for your favorite food films. We're doing a soft launch of this, but you can vote for your favorite food films of all time over the next month. And they're all listed, 200 and some films, so you can see them, see what they're all about. And then November 1st, we're going down to the top 5 food films of all times, and we're going to determine what the best documentary and what the best feature is. So if it's Food Inc., if it's fresh, whatever it is, vote for it, tell your friends. I think it's going to be a really exciting way to get people to pay attention to all those great food films. So on that note, I want to thank our panelists. Let's give them a big hand.